Hello and welcome to the Week 4 Southern California Prep Insider Los Angeles Football Podcast alongside Keith the Molder. I am Connor Morissette. Keith, we had an action-packed Week 3. The top 10, it's looking pretty similar at the top, but at the bottom we have a big shake-up there. Really crazy Week 3. I was at the Dorsey game. I saw you went to Garfield against Harvard-Westlake, so two LA teams really struggling in those games, but there were some LA teams that had some big wins as well.
Yeah, this week was a key week for teams to differentiate themselves. A lot of undefeated teams we have in the top 10 because they've played good ball. Garfield just didn't have what it takes to beat Harvard-Westlake. They had a quarterback injury, though. Polanco out with the injury on his throwing shoulder. So we'll see what happens this week.
Yeah, Dorsey struggled too against Sarah. The team is really talented, but I expected them to put up a little bit more of a fight. We'll get into that in a little bit. Let's get to the top 10, though, Keith. 10 through 1, that's how we usually start, but I want to shout out two teams who are just outside the top 10 this week. We have Torres, who has been in the top 10 before this season. Taekwon Gilmore for them is an incredible runner. They're just outside because they had some similar opponents with some teams in the top 10, and they haven't beaten them by that large of a margin, but they're still 3-0, they're still undefeated, and as long as they have Gilmore, I think they got a chance in just about every game they're going to play.
Yeah, we had them at 10 the previous 2 weeks in the top 10. That said, not as of a dominating performance, as you said. Their defense gives up a decent amount of points. That said, some of these other teams like we have, and going right into number 10, Roosevelt, they've been playing outstanding ball.
And then the other team I want to shout out quickly before we get to the top 10, San Fernando, playing in Division 1. They're 2-1. They have some impressive wins, so they're just on the outside looking in. But Keith, you mentioned it, Roosevelt, Division 2 school. They're coming into this at number 10. They're 3-0. They beat Franklin, which is a big win for them this past Friday, 42-35, so that's a tight game. Roosevelt is the number 10 team to start our top 10. And I think that's right where they belong. Yes, they're D2, but 3-0 and a big win against Franklin, I think that's a good place for them.
Yeah, a little bit of an unknown, but they're obviously making a name for themselves thus far. They've scored 41 points in every single one of their games this season. Last game against Franklin, they picked off QB Alfred Bobadilla 2 times. It was a close win, 42-35. The test will be going on the road to play Westchester. That one will be a tough game for sure.
That will be very interesting. Moving to 9, Eagle Rock. They're undefeated as well. They crushed Hollywood 35-0 this past Friday. Another undefeated Division 2 school. And the reason they're in front of Roosevelt is just because they're beating teams a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. Holding a team to nothing, that just goes to show this defensive stability. That said, Davey Stone, one of the best offensive performers on that team. The test will be Fairfax this week. We know that Crenshaw performed very well against Fairfax, so that quarterback from Fairfax, he's dangerous. We'll see how Eagle Rock faces him.
Number 8, Huntington Park. Maybe the best of the Division 2 schools right now. They're 3-0 as well. They crushed Legacy this past Friday, 66-14. And then before that, they've shut out 2 teams. So this is a team that can score and they can also defend. They look very dangerous in Division 2. Remember, Hawkins is down and LA moves up. So that could be your Division 2 champion, potentially Huntington Park. But I think they'll get some stiff competition from Eagle Rock and Roosevelt. The Division 2 playoffs, when you get there, those are going to be very interesting.
Yeah, we talked about dark horses to start the season, and Huntington Park for surely a dark horse. Here's the stat, folks. This year, they've outscored opponents 161-14. That's just unbelievable. 66 points, great performance as well. On defense, they had 6 tackles for loss, 3 fumble recoveries, a pick, and 5 passes defended. So they can do it on both sides of the ball. It'll be interesting to see how they do come league play.
Now we'll move into some Division 1 schools. At number 7, Venice. They beat Arleta 41-8. Before that, El Camino Real. They took down by a score of 18-15 on the road. Looks like they're clicking. Bryson Tremaine is doing well for them, the wide receiver. They're putting up big points. I know Arleta's not the greatest competition, but they seem to be a premier team in Division 1 at the LA section.
Yeah, I like what I see from their skill players. You mentioned the wide receiving core, one of the best in the LA City section. That said, they're playing Newberry Park, a team from up north. That'll be a good non-conference test for them.
Coming in at 6, Banning. They beat Milliken. That's a good win for them, 25-21. They're 2-1 on the year. Westchester lost this past week, as did Carson, so Banning slides all the way up to 6. I think they were 8 last week. They're just continuing to play well. And first, we thought there could be some issues with some suspensions, but they're looking good.
Yeah, they've shown to be tough and deep as well, showing that even if you lost some players, that you can still find some rabbits out of the hat. Jacob Garcia, he has been their leader this season on offense. 234 yards last game, 2 touchdowns. The running game brought in 181 yards and 2 touchdowns as well. Senior Jose Lopez, he was a key for them on defense. 3 tackles for loss as well as 8 tackles. So Milliken, that's a good team from the South Bay. So nice win for Banning.
Into the top 5 now. Dorsey, I don't want to get too down on Dorsey, but I think you got to say they've been the biggest disappointment so far this season. They start the year on the road or at a neutral site against Calabasas from Agoura High School, and they lose that game as expected. Then they play Serra, but they have a bye. So they play Calabasas, get a bye, and then Serra. And that was at home, and they got demolished, 44-7 this past Friday. And I know Serra's very, very talented, and they were hungry for their first win of the year. So I take nothing away from them. But I was expecting to see a little bit more from Dorsey, and they really couldn't do too much. They started the year at number 2. They fall to 5. I still think they're very talented. They have some premier Division I players in Charles Mincy, Isaiah Small, so they're doing all right. But the way they've started this year, you got to kind of look at it and say what's going on. But when they do play teams from LA, I think it'll get better.
Yeah, it'll definitely get better. And we hate to talk too much down on a team that's only has 2 losses against some pretty good teams. But the way they've lost, it really hasn't been that impressive. They haven't really scored much on offense, really gotten anything going through the passing game, let alone the running game. I know Charles Mincy has had some injury concerns. That said, Serra has been unbelievable this season, and even more so against Dorsey. They carved up that defense. Their pass defense from Dorsey hasn't been able to do much, really. Serra completed 18 for 22 with 171 yards and a touchdown, 226 yards and 5 touchdowns on the ground. So this Dorsey defense, they need to get back in shape if they're going to try and make a crack at the top 3.
The running game was the story of that one for Serra. Dorsey had no answer. Going into the top 4, Crenshaw. They have a backup quarterback, Jared Greenfield, but he looks very, very good. He leads Crenshaw to a big win over Fairfax, 26-7. Rayshawn Williams had a couple touchdowns in that game. Greenfield looks comfortable passing the ball, and what I thought was very impressive from his game, how he can extend plays. He was able to get out of the pocket, and some plays it looked like he might get sacked. He extended them and ended up leading Crenshaw to a win over Fairfax. So he's their backup quarterback, remember. He's looking good.
Yeah, we're here at Cromwell Field at SC, and you talk about improvisation. Sam Darnold does it as well, and the quarterback from Crenshaw can do it just as well. And the crazy thing is he's only a sophomore, folks, and he's coming in relief of Isaiah Johnson, their normal starter, who's a transfer, has to sit out because transfer rules. So it just goes to show you the mental toughness of that quarterback, and I think they'll go far. The key, though, they're playing Garfield this Friday.
It's a big game.
Big game for sure. And Adam Polanco, as we said, the right shoulder injury could come to bite Garfield. We'll see how they perform, but I think it's going to be a win for Crenshaw as well.
Into the top 3, San Pedro, they were 2 last week. They fall to 3. I mean, no fault of their own. They beat Cabrillo 42-0, and they've outscored opponents 131-21 this season. So, they drop one, but I think that's just because the second team, Palisades, has been so good. So San Pedro, you're still in the top 3. You drop a spot through no fault of your own. This team has been on fire lately.
Absolutely, and the thing that I like is their defense. Their defense really steadfast on the defensive line. The front 7 is unbelievable from them. 42-0, great win over Cabrillo. Cabrillo not really the best of opponents, but that said, they have a lot of momentum going into league play.
Palisades, as I mentioned, at number 2, they beat Granada Hills on the road, 49-24. They're 3-0. I think, I don't want to, come out with a really too hot of a take, but I think they're the second best team pretty firmly in the LA City section. I don't want to take anything away from Dorsey or San Pedro, but Palisades, I've been impressed with their defense, and on offense, they're putting up points.
Absolutely. I may even say even a hotter take. I think they could be one of the better teams, maybe the best team in the section. I mean, Narbonne be as they may, but I think Palisades, they bring everything. They have a great defensive line. In that 49-24 win over Granada Hills, they had Dakota Hamilton with 182 yards, 3 touchdowns on offense. The defense, 17 tackles for loss, folks. Sear Riley, he had 3 tackles, also had a 63-yard pick. Baraka Beckett, 2.5 tackles for loss. This defense is certainly dangerous, one of the better points of their team, and I think that's what is going to take them far, is that defense.
Their defense is good. I think the Narbonne defense is just on another level that no team in the LA section can match. Just watching those guys battle week in and week out is something, so that's why they stay at number 1 for me. But hey, they'll eventually face each other in the playoffs at some point, so we'll be sure to see that matchup unfold before our eyes later in the season. Narbonne this past week beat Palos Verdes 34-15. The offense finally got going after struggling in their first 2 weeks. They're 2-1, but they've played the toughest schedule, maybe besides Dorsey. but it's very similar. They've played a very tough schedule, 3 games compared to Dorsey's 2, and they're 2-1. So, you know, take nothing away from them. They're the best team in the section for me, I think, pretty easily.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think Palisades, you know, they're just a little bit smidge under Narbonne. You know, hot take be as it may. Narbonne, they have so much talent, especially when they play against some of these lesser competitors. They're playing Corona Centennial this Friday.
Yeah.
A huge game, probably best game in the Southern section, to say the least. Jalen Chapman talked about he had some struggles early on in the season. Had a great game, 64% completion percentage, 262 yards, 2 touchdowns. Also 100 yards and a touchdown on the ground, a key dual threat for them. Narbonne also added 321 yards on the ground other than Chapman. Darian Butler, 6 tackles for loss and 15 tackles for loss for the Gauchos as a team. 6 sacks. DeMonte Peoples had a pick 6, so
The
their
defense is pretty good.
Yeah, definitely rolling for sure. And we'll see how they fare against Corona Centennial.
So that's your top 10. Roosevelt 10, Eagle Rock 9, Huntington Park 8, 7 Venice, 6 Banning, 5 Dorsey, 4 Crenshaw, 3 San Pedro, 2 Palisades, and 1 Narbonne. All right, Keith, so that's the top 10. Now we'll move on to the game ball segment. Who are the players of the week in the LA City section this past week? I have my 2 players. I know you have your 2. I'll let you get started.
All right, so my 2 players, well, mainly 3 actually. First, we'll start off Jared Greenfield, the sophomore quarterback from Crenshaw. Unbelievable in his replacement of Isaiah Johnson. He comes in, he's very young, but he has shown, as you said, that improvisation ability to extend plays. You get a game ball from me, and 2 game balls from that Torres Belmont game. Taquan Gilmore, folks, somebody's got to recruit him, although he loves the yards.
Yep.
He loves the yards.
Wants to
He's
be an actor.
fantastic football player. 352 rushing yards, 4 rushing touchdowns, 10 tackles, a 23-yard pass play, a sack, a 40-yard kick return, and a 2-point conversion. He can truly do it all. It's almost like the Taquan Gilmore show every single week. You just tune in to see how many yards he's put up. He is unbelievable. One of the section leaders in terms of yards. We'll see what he does this Friday. That said, from that Torres Belmont tilt, another name, Isaiah Chapman, 572 yards on the year. He had 211 yards and a touchdown, 2-point conversion, as well as a 34-yard kick return. So those 2 guys, you get game balls from me. A nice game. Belmont, Torres. Now, who are your game balls?
My 2 game balls. First, I'm giving it to the big man, Sear Riley from Palisades Charter. He intercepted a pass against Renata Hills, returned it 70 yards. Remember, this is a big defensive lineman. He returned the ball 70 yards, set up Palisades for a score. He gets a game ball from me. My second game ball goes to Rayshawn Williams of Crenshaw. He brings down 2 touchdowns from Jared Greenfield in the win against Fairfax. So Rayshawn Williams, he gets a game ball, as does Sear Riley. Keep up the good work, gentlemen. You guys are the players of the week for me in the LA City section. Let's move on to picks now, Keith. It's the best time of the show. I personally love doing these the most. Last week, the Sarah Dorsey game, that was kind of the one where we were a little divided. Hey, you have the better record than me, so I'm going to take some time to brag here. I had Sarah, Keith had Dorsey, so we all know how that turned out. But Keith has the better overall record this year, so let's not, yeah, I got one right, okay, but let's not take too much away from Keith. So the first game I want to pick, Keith, Garfield against Crenshaw. It's at Crenshaw. I think Crenshaw's the better team. I don't care where they play. I'd pick Crenshaw. I have them beating Garfield.
Yeah, I'll agree with you on that one. Crenshaw, they have the hot hand coming in. Their defense has been exceptional, and I think that's where they'll have some success against Garfield. Garfield, against Harvard Westlake, they can move the ball well. They like the ground and pound, but they can also throw it through the air. They were only down by 8 points in the end of that game against Harvard Westlake, but I think that Crenshaw is going to shut them down. They have a really nice back four. That secondary is their strength.
Westchester Carson. I think these teams are very similar. They'll probably be okay in the LA section, but the non-conference schedule, or the non-LA section schedule, I should say, no conferences, has really hurt them, both of them. So they're both 1-2 coming into this game. I think they're fairly even in terms of points scored and how they've done defensively. So I'm going to pick Carson just because they're at home. I think that'll be enough to push them over the edge.
Yeah, I'll have to agree with you on that one. Carson, they've shown a little bit more offense this year than Westchester has. Westchester has won some games by just a little bit of margins. They've kept things tight. That said, I think that Carson, they get a big win over Westchester.
San Fernando against Notre Dame. San Fernando, it's a team who we had just outside of our top 10, but against Notre Dame, a power from the southern section. You really can't pick against them, especially after they dismantled Birmingham at Birmingham. And this game is at Notre Dame. San Fernando's taking them on there. I'm picking Notre Dame.
Yeah, I'm gonna actually have to disagree with you. I'm gonna go with San Fernando on that one. You know, while it is a home game for Sherman Oaks Notre Dame, San Fernando just a couple miles up the road, so I think they bring a away presence. That said, I think that their offense is just a little bit better than Sherman Oaks Notre Dame. That said, it'll be a close game for sure.
And then the final game, the biggest game of this week by far, Narbonne playing Centennial. It's at Centennial. I've talked a lot about the Narbonne defense. In the big games this season, the Narbonne offense hasn't really shown up. I'm taking Centennial. I just think they're a little bit better than Narbonne, even though these are two top 50 schools in the nation.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll have to agree with you on that one as well. Centennial, I think that their offense is just too good in their structure, really. I think Jalen Chapman, he's been pressured in some high-stakes games and hasn't really risen to the occasion. Obviously, against Palos Verdes, a little bit of a lesser competition team. That said, playing on a big stage like Crony Centennial, I think it's going to be Centennial all the way.
So there's your Week 4 preview. We look back on Week 3. This has been the LA City Section Football Podcast. For Keith the Molder, I'm Connor Morissette. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.